welcome to another episode of EduTalks Podcast. This is the podcast where we unpack the real challenges and the real hopes behind education in the Philippines. I am your host, Dr. Lorraine Anino, an educational supervisor and a teacher by heart, and someone who deeply believes in inclusive, grounded, and transformative education. And today, we are going to dive into a timely and necessary conversation. How do we design effective English lessons in schools that face digital limitations? We are not just talking about applications, softwares, devices, or high tech classrooms, but we are going to talk about the real stories from the field, especially from last mile schools and under resourced public schools in our country here in the Philippines. We'll also explore how the frameworks like TPAC, SAMR, and UDL can be used effectively and also reflectively, even when the resources are limited. So here's how today's conversation will flow. In segment one, we will begin with the context mapping. We are going to discuss the realities of remote schools and the digital challenges they face. In segment two, we are going to walk you through the application or the framework application, where we show how pedagogy, content, and technology intersect. And in segment three, we will be presenting real lesson designs. And finally, segment four. And joining with me in this journey is someone who has worn many hats: Doctor of Applied Linguistics, Doctor of Educational Management, and a fellow champion of educational reform. He is also a member or a consultant of EDCOM, or the Second Congressional Commission on Education, Dr. Justin Jones Gino Tarte. Hello, sir.
Hello, Dr. Lorraine. Thank you for your invitation. So it's quite a privilege right now to talk about the current situation of the Philippine education, especially with the situation of schools which are situated in rural barangays.
Okay, so before we dive into our discussion, Dr. Justin, could you give us a brief background about what EDCOM is, what it aims to do, and why its work is significant in today's educational context?
Okay, so the Congressional Commission on Education is an agency in which it is composed of senators and, of course, congressmen, and there are also consultants, which I am one of them. No? And our goal is actually to undertake or, let's say, perform a national assessment on the current situation of the performance of Philippine education right now. And actually, EDCOM has long existed. However, Senator Angara revitalized it during his time as the Secretary of the Department of Education. And right now we are doing our best. And actually, we have already released our evaluation for the year two of our function as the Educational Commission here in our country.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Justin, for that wonderful introduction. No, so I think it is best now that we should start. We will now start with our podcast. So to start off with our conversation, I know that both of us have had our fair share of working in rural or far flung schools where things are not always easy, especially when it comes to integrating technology into the classroom. And we have both seen it firsthand.
Yeah.
And you've also done more extensive work at the policy level, considering that you are also part of EDCOM. So just to set the stage for our listeners, can you describe like the digital challenges that our public schools are facing in these areas? Maybe from your work in EDCOM or even from your personal experience.
Okay, so actually, the digitalization of education in public schools are really progressive now,
Mhm.
but we can't say that it's all encompassing because there are
Mhm.
some, especially those belonging to last mile schools or those schools who are really underserved now. So they have lack of qualified teachers, they have lack of
Mhm.
resources, and of course, even with the challenge of electricity and access to to technology. No, and this shares a two-way problem. First one is the problem of digitalization. So when we talk about digitalization, unlike those in big cities, no, or cities in like around the areas that has access to technology, no, it's really there's this technological disparity, the gap in digitalization. So I would say that the first problem is actually more on the access of technological tools. Unlike schools in central, like central schools or barangay schools, no, it's really different with them having access to technology, to internet, and all those things that would augment that the quality of instruction and as well as their learning. But in rural barangay schools, or let's say last mile schools, we could
Mm-mm.
really say that there are some students who are still ignorant about the
Mm-mm.
advantages that could be brought by what they call this by that could be brought by technology. And it's a sad thing to see that there are some
Mm-mm.
students who still have the difficulty to maneuver laptops,
Mm-mm.
cell phones, and even they are really ignorant with, let's say, the open AI right now. No, so that's the main problem here. And another problem is actually the outcome of it. Another challenge that deals with language education. Being an English teacher, I believe, Mom Lorraine, you have the same
Yes.
experience now. So we've started at the grassroots level, and right now, although I'm a consultant, but it still paints the same picture with what I've seen many years ago. So based on our visitations to these schools, we could really see that the level of proficiency among the students, let's say in communicating in English, or let's say even in just communication, it is
Mm-mm.
really poor, no? And that reflects the, let's say, the failure of our education system to provide inclusive education, not just to provide inclusive, but to provide an inclusive and quality education for all. Because we could really see the difference between the students coming from, again, as I've mentioned, schools that have access to everything, and compared to these students who are coming from last mile schools. And it's a sad reality here in our country.
That's something that's really evident. That's something that's really eye opening. No, so I it is good that you have mentioned no the reality, the triple burden that we are
Yeah.
facing. Number one is the lack of technology, lack of training, which is very much true, and of course the last one is the lack of systemic support. No, so this is something that struck us the most, no, as how layered the issue really is. It's not just about gadgets.
Yeah.
It's not just about Wi-Fi. We are talking about the system here, the access, and how even the most basic tools can make or even break the learning experience, especially to those students, no, living in far-flung areas or last mile schools studying there. And I just want to share just a little or an experience, no, when I was teaching in those settings in the past. No, I can really relate to that struggle, Doc, just because I remember like this one class we had where in those areas we had to delay a digital activity for days just because there is power interruption in the area, and some students would travel back and forth just to charge their phones. They do not even have gadgets, some of them, most of them. And so hearing your insights just really affirms how urgent
Yeah.
and interconnected this problem really is. And these aren't just numbers. We're not just talking about numbers of students. They are real people. They are real children. And it's really painful to witness them trying to catch up with the digital demands and even lacking the basics. And I think that is what makes this conversation really necessary,
Yeah.
because we are not just talking about technology, innovation. We are not just talking about theories here, but we are talking about how we could put these theories in context. So, with that, I'm really curious to hear more about what we can actually do to respond on this round, no? Especially with the frameworks that I mentioned earlier, TPAC, SAMR, and the UDL. So, that would then lead us to our next segment. So, for the next segment, Dr. Justin, we are going to go now to our design lab. You took the lead in crafting the pedagogical application here. And could you please walk us through how you apply TPAC, SAMR, and UDL in building this English lesson?
So actually, PPAC is a thing that we wanted to really apply in the modern
Mm-mm.
education. So we wanted to integrate technological advancements into our lessons. No, so for example, we wanted to not just ensure content and pedagogical knowledge, let's say in our instruction, but we wanted also to put into account the technological side of it. No, and actually, Doc Lorraine, we have here actually a framework I have designed. No, so it is just a sample, and this is the way on how do we apply PPAC into our lesson. So I have here an instruction. This is about this is actually this would actually hit PPAC and as well as SAMR for sorry. So here the instruction would say using your cell phone recorders, laptops with your groups, create an audio book of your original short story about the horrors of social injustice in the modern day Philippines. So as we could see, everything is present. All of the components of PPAC, it could be spotted based on this instruction. So for example, for technology, we allow our students to use their phone to record, and of course their laptops to provide edits into their output. And then of course we would allow to group them according to the needs of the students, especially if everyone does not have any access to gadgets, to laptops. No, so we try to leverage those students who have those kinds of digital tools. And of course, we would always provide the content knowledge because after all, Doc Lorraine, diba, we always go back to our objectives, right? So in that way, we would really hit the technological, pedagogical, and content knowledge in our instruction. And concerning the SAMR, so we have actually here different variations on how do we apply things. So for example, this, let's say, SAMR would be, let's say, it is kind of hierarchical, diba? We begin with substitution and we end up with redefinition. And to begin with, especially if we have, or if we really lack the digital tools, we should always begin with substitution. So for example, if your students have their phone, no, if it's available, so why not allow them to use that phone to encode, diba? It would be more convenient, diba? It would be more efficient compared to the traditional pen and paper writing, no? So it's all about writing a short story. And Doc Lorraine, you know how hard it is to check these outputs, especially if we do them one by one. And through the usage of substitution, no, instead of the paper, they would have their phones or the digital copies or the soft copies of their output. It would be easier for us to assess and also to evaluate the outputs of our students. However, if they have their laptops, we could actually move higher to augmentation. So we all know that technology would bring a lot of boons in our let's say in our daily tasks, no? And through augmentation, we could actually take advantage of the, let's say, grammatical suggestions that we could have, especially would be using those tools such as Microsoft Words, Google Docs, no? So those would really suggest some of how can we improve our output in terms of grammar or in terms of composition, okay? But Dr. Rain, this would mean a lot if we could actually achieve modification and redefinition. So now in modification, everything changes, no?
Yes.
Technology would modify the nature of the output making. So instead of doing the traditional one, we could actually shift into a digitalized and also more modern way of creating output, or let's say short story. But when everything is just at the reach of our hands, we can actually do redefinition. And in this way, actually, instead of just writing a short story that would reflect the horrors of social injustice here in our country, we can actually do an audio book. In that way, diba, we change the nature of the task. No? Instead of just doing a short story, why not create an audio book? It would become more engaging, no? And it would become more challenging, actually. Diba? And yun nga, in the redefinition part, we would redefine the short story and create an audiobook. And actually, Doc Lorraine, the first thing that would come into our mind as one of the benefits of this one is actually through the storage of those outputs. Kasi unlike papers, di ba, it would just be put into scratch. But if we could upload these audiobooks into some, let's say, social media sites or let's say
platforms,
di ba? So we could actually have a better storage, no? And if we would really want to go back to these outputs or let's say evaluate ourselves many years from now, so it could actually be a good thing, diba? So yun siya, it is night and day. The difference between, let's say, substitution and redefinition is really night and day. So we need to, redirect our purpose. Do not settle for just substitution. If you have the means, you can actually move forward to redefinition. And it would really mean a lot to your students, not just on their, let's say, competence in using technology, but more so on the amount of learning that they could actually have if we would try to deviate from the traditional. And regarding the universal design for learning, no, so we wanted to really have this equitable access to education, no matter where you are, no matter who you are, no. So long as you are enrolled in a school, you should have an access to digital education, no. So in the doctorate, actually we could adjust different things here, no, and it is a challenge for us teachers, no. I believe you could relate to this one, although we are
Yes.
not in the teaching field right now, but still we are consultants, and this is based on our experiences from way years
Mm.
before. So we have to really adjust now. So make the group task equitable. Let's say the group should have equitable access to digital tools, just like what I've mentioned. No, so do not just group them based on a random manner. No, why not group them based on, let's say,
The
the
availability.
the utility of, the availability of the tools, no? So ganyan siya. And then of course we should be really resourceful, especially if we are situated in remote barangays or let's say last mile schools, no? So we should not settle with the idea that we don't have it. We should find it, no? That's I know that is being proactive with this problem, no? And if we would succumb to the idea of like we don't have any access to it, therefore we are jeopardizing the learning of our students. And another thing, it is a challenge for us teachers. So we have to innovate and of course initiate to provide, let's say, the tools. Now, actually, we have the computerization program of the Department of Education. However, it's kind of sad because there are some tools that are, I believe, subpar. I would use the term subpar because it cannot last long and it cannot function well because maybe there is a problem with the allotment and they have resorted to low specs like units. No, so it's another problem to address. Okay, and another thing we have to adjust our instruction, may it be through our teaching, through the learning experiences, or even the teaching manner. No, so we have to adjust it and of course address the problem of digital disparities. Okay, and of course we should apply SAMR on various level. No, so if we cannot do redefinition, at least strive for modification, or maybe if we cannot do that, do the augmentation, or if we cannot really do that, no, so we should settle for substitution. But it would be really best if we could achieve the highest level of this technological integration. And lastly, if there is a problem with access to digital tools, maybe we could really resort to some group outputs instead of individualized one. No? So that would really matter on how do we design the instruction or how do we design the activity. So I guess that is the thing that we need to observe and also apply in addressing this problem of digitalization, especially in English language education, Dr. Rain.
Okay, so thank you so much for that, Dr. Justin. That was such a well thought out integration of all three frameworks. And I really love how you also emphasize, the benefit, no? The benefit that this it not only targets or it not only benefits the students, but it also benefits the teachers as well, no? So it's all encompassing, and also that you mentioned or you emphasized flexibility here. So not just in technology, but also the way how the students would be able to express themselves, no?
Yeah.
And honestly, that is something that what we often miss when we talk about digital learning, no? Again, we are not just focusing on the availability of the gadgets. How would we maximize, no? But rather on how we would maximize it and how we would design it better with empathy. So another follow-up question, Doc Justin, no, in contexts like ours where technology or tech access is very limited, I believe you have answered earlier the risks of over applying these frameworks. Like, what are the possible cases where teachers might feel pressured to reach red definition? And even when the situation clearly cannot support it.
Okay. With that, Doc Lorraine, no, the answer would be use it if it's necessary or if it is appropriate. We cannot always achieve redefinition if the task only asks for augmentation, diba? So do not push it, okay? Use it only when it fits well, okay? No? And regarding the challenge, actually, we have just published an article about our reflection on the literacy of our basic education graduates, no, and it's it's disturbing because there are a lot of graduates who are really illiterate. We could actually categorize them as those learners who failed to achieve competencies, no, and it should require a reflexive practice not only for us teachers but also for our policymakers, for our administrators, and of course from our students and parents. No? So it requires a unified. No, we should let's say we should work in harmony. No, it is not only the Department of Education that has to work with it. It should be everyone. No, so it requires collaboration, cooperation, and
Mm-mm.
of course active participation from everyone. And as we could see, diba, we have now the access to OpenAI, and if you would use
Mm-mm.
that one on only for, let's say, productivity, it would be a problem because it would undermine the actual learning of our students. No, so instead of them acquiring the competencies that we intended them to achieve, no, it is actually done by computers or let's say the internet. No, so it's not a proper thing to think about. No, and I could still remember this line mentioned to us during my master's. No, it was delivered by someone. I could remember his name, Sir Prim. No, he is an educator from the United States, and he emphasized the idea that it should be focused. The use of digital education should be focused on engagement rather than productivity. So no matter how well the let's say no matter how well the lesson is designed, if it does not engages the student into actual learning, it would be useless. No? So that is another challenge for our teachers. Okay, so I believe I've answered the question, Dr. Lorraine. No? So if you have, I don't know
Mm-mm.
if I really hit the question, but
Yes, exactly.
that is my take on the problem of over reliance of to
Mm-mm.
digital education.
Okay, so very well said, Dr. Justin, and that is such an important insight. And as a former classroom teacher, I have seen these gap up close, and we expect high output from the students, but we fail to account,
Yeah.
no, the needs or the access that they needed. So the lesson here is that we start where the learners are and we meet them there.
Yeah.
So it is really empowering to know no, that EDCOM is not just observing from a distance, but you really are actively trying to bridge the gap between the evidence and the policy that you're
Yeah.
working on. And with that said, with all the research, no, and findings coming from your end, do you feel that these recommendations are now being heard, or are there any promising signs that our current education system is ready or willing to embrace change, especially in the area of digital education?
Actually, we are really happy that Senator Angara is one of the members of the
Mm-mm.
EDCOM because it is a direct connection between our commission and to the Department of Education. However, that with that being said, we could only say that it is heard unless there is an action. No? So no matter how we claim that we are really working, if it does not come into fruition, Doc Lorraine, it would not make sense. No, it would just be a promise. It would just be a void statement. No, so it requires really the urgency for us to work, not just only with our based on our recommendation. The Department of Education should work on it along with our government. No, so yun siya, Doc Lorraine. It's really important for our agencies to be really immersed and also to be really proactive in addressing problems in our education system, especially in digitalization at
Mm-mm.
various level, no? And focusing on the problem that we have among remote schools or let's say rural barangay schools.
Okay, so thank you so much for that, Doc Justin. Last question about it. Do you think we are moving in the right direction now when it comes to supporting our teachers and schools through policy? It could just be a yes or no answer.
I think it's a yes, Dr. Rain.
Okay, that's good to hear, Dr. Justin. So before we wrap up, one last question. What advice would you offer to our fellow educators, especially those who may be more rooted in the traditional methods of teaching as we all continue no, to venture in this rapidly or fast shifting landscape of digital education? How can they begin to embrace these changes without feeling overwhelmed or left behind? We're talking about those teachers.
Um, it's actually simple. Do not be
Mm.
self-centered. Remember, education right now is student-centered. No,
Mm.
so do not be too rooted on what you believe in or
Mm.
what you think is let's say what you think is effective because your practices from actually 5 years ago might not be effective right now. No, so try to become adaptive to change and try to become innovative. Embrace change as if it is the solution to address the problems that we have. Because the problem of our education system is actually changing. So we have to improve, we have to progress to keep up with these challenges. No? And yun siya, Doc Lorraine, it's actually a thing that would affect our students. No? So especially if the teacher is really laid back to traditional ones. No? So it's really hard. Okay, so it's again, it is a prompt for our teachers. It is an urgent prompt for our teachers to really embrace the advantages, no, of digital education.
Okay, so again, thank you so much, Doc. That is so reassuring to hear, especially for many of our colleagues who might feel unsure where to start. No? So it really begins with, again, openness and small, consistent step. Be courageous, be adaptive, and as well as that transformative,
It's
innovative.
actually good that you have mentioned transformative, Doc Lorraine. No? Kasi if we are actually clinging to what we have right now, therefore we are being stuck in that realm of teaching. No? So if we don't, if we won't step forward, no, therefore we cannot actually transform the education system here in our country. And right now, it's actually problematic. No? And if we would move forward, therefore we would be stuck in this loop forever. No? So that's my advice to our educators, Dr. Ray.
Thank you so much for that reminder, Doc Justin. And again, it gives us hope, no, knowing that research is actually being heard and it is translated into action through bodies like EDCOM. Thank you so much, Dr. Justin. This was a very rich, very thoughtful discussion, and we hope this episode sparks ideas for teachers and decision makers, policymakers alike. Digital learning should not just be future focused, it must be inclusive and responsive today. And again, dagang salamat, Dr. Justin. And it's always a joy to work with fellow educators who really, truly, and genuinely care about the lives of our students and our future.
Thank you as well, Doc Lorena. It's actually a nice opportunity to share our functions in the Congressional Education Commission, and it's actually nice to see you back now. So, yun din. Thank you, Doc Lorraine.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening to the EduTalks Lab podcast series. New episodes drop every Thursday. Listen for free on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and other streaming platforms. This is Dr. Lorraine, and I'll catch you in the next one.